Are you familiar with FBI Special Agents Kyle Seraphin?
I'm familiar with the name.
Is that yes?
I'm familiar with the name. I'm familiar with the name. I'm familiar with the name.
Joining me now is a frequent guest of the show, former FBI Special Agent, whistleblower as well, Kyle Seraphin.
Let's bring in Kyle Seraphin. He's the FBI whistleblower who helped expose government censorship of our First Amendment rights.
Now, we only have this memo because a recently suspended FBI agent called Kyle Seraphin brought it to the public, and we're grateful that he did. Kyle, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
He's the host of something that strangely is called The Kyle Seraphin Show. Follow him on Twitter. I'm Sebastian Gorka. I'll call you later. We'll talk guns. We'll talk optics.
Perfect, man. God bless you, brother. Thank you for standing up for the truth, man. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks.
Well, so Kyle, thank you so much for joining us. Great chatting with you.
Kyle Seraphin, thank you.
Kyle Seraphin, I can't thank you enough for speaking out. I knew you guys were out there, and I knew it was just a matter of time, but you got a lot of guts putting your face and your name to this. You're doing a service on behalf of the American people, and from the bottom of my cracked and broken heart sometimes, thank you very much.
Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Really, this has been a long, long week. Today is October the 20th. It is starting to have a little touch of fall in the air here in Texas, America, and we had a slight delay because Rumble took its time getting itself up this morning. Had a little bit of a snooze fest and was unable to boot up a number of things. If you guys were loading earlier and you were seeing some problems, it wasn't on our end, and we're not late on purpose. But we did want to make sure we could stream the show. Today is Friendly Friday. I saw a couple of you say that you're upset with my position for the Speaker of the House. If you are a Sarah fan, if you are a suspendable, you know we are actually winning right now. No one for Speaker is now the leading candidate, still the leading candidate and undefeated thus far in all the votes. No one for Speaker. Hashtag no one, the number 4 Speaker on any of your social medias. Let it trend, folks. They need to shut this sucker down. Let's see what happens when we have no Jim Jordan, no Kevin McCarthy, no Hakeem Jeffries, Extreme Hakeem, no any of them. Just shut it down. Let it just see. I promise you, you will not notice anything in your normal life, unless you're Fed, in which case, thanks for listening, Feds. We really appreciate you. Thanks for being there. Thanks for keeping track of us. Make sure that you fill out your ECs properly and that you spell Seraphin with a PH. We do have Steve Friend, who's going to be joining me here in just a second. Before we do, let me give you kind of a taste of what we're going to get into. We're going to have some nauseating clips of the Biden administration. Joe Biden decided to take to the national stage last night, despite the fact that he was very, very tired for a long life. He's been tired because he's alive for thousands of years and he's running out of steam in his existence. But he took to the stage to talk about something that I think you're going to really, really have a problem with. Terrorists, right? We're going to talk about how much your expectations are not going to be met. She got a text message from my mother who's in the chat, and she said it's nauseating. It makes her want to puke. And yeah, I think all of you are going to want to puke by the end of that. But we've got great news too. We're also going to talk about Gavin Newsom, who took an L in California. Thankfully, the assault weapons ban in California has been put on pause. Of course, they will reinstate this, and the Ninth Circuit will come back in force, I'm sure, and say that, of course, it's justifiable, because they're just like Bowie knives. The actual AG of California made arguments that assault weapons and Bowie knives have a 1-to-1 correlation between now and like the 1840s. So that's cool. And then we're going to talk about Merrick Garland, our favorite crying old man from the Biden administration, who has been out there and being this sort of like attack chihuahua of this particular admin, and some of the fun things that they're doing. They're threatening banks. They're trying to set us up for another mortgage collapse. That's really good. I'm glad we're using our government for those kind of things and kicking guys like me and Steve Friend out. So let me say thanks to our first sponsor really quick, and then we will bring on my buddy. Here it is. If you'll give me a full screen here, Ryan, I will say thank you to our friends over at Patriot Coolers. Guys, I talked to the people at Patriot Coolers. I said, hey, I need to order up a new hard-sided cooler. I'm going to get rid of my Yeti. I'm going to give it away. I'm going to give it to a friend or family. Somebody will get it soon. It was a wedding gift for us. And a day later, I had a tan cooler landing on my doorstep. Incredibly fast shipping. Maybe it's just because we're both in Texas, but that was pretty awesome. Go to Patriot Coolers with an S on the end, patriotcoolers.com. Use promo code Kyle, K-Y-L-E. We get credit for the sale. You save yourself 10%. If you buy any of the bigger items, it's going to be free shipping. That's really easy. If you buy 2 tumblers, you'll get free shipping. Also easy. Promo code Kyle, K-Y-L-E. Check out their hard stuff. I'll tell you this. As you are all considering how jacked up the world is and looking around and thinking, man, there could be paragliders coming over our border, or there could be people throwing a revolt in real time in your cities, having something that can keep food cold in the back of your vehicle is actually one of my survival plans. And so I would just say, if you don't have a strong cooler that's capable, these things are good. You can also use them because you can lock it. You can store your weapons in them. Just saying. I may or may not have used my Patriot cooler and or my Yeti coolers to hold onto a gun or two in my life with a little padlock. Pretty nice. These are lockable coolers. Very cool stuff. All right, check out patriotcoolers.com, promo code Kyle. Let's bring him on. Let's bring on the real Steve friend. Let's do it right now. What are you doing, buddy?
I'm just very relieved that Rumble must have hit Thirsty Thursday pretty hard, but they got the vitamin drip this morning, got the Bloody Mary in the system, a couple Advil, and we're good to go. We're off and running.
I used to have this idea before I joined the FBI that we would launch a business of women and men who are very professional looking, who would show up in a suit the way you'd expect an FBI agent to actually look, but doesn't in real life. And they would roll in with a briefcase, and the briefcase would actually be an IV treatment for executives that had to party hardy all night and still had to make it to their morning board meetings. But like sometimes you have to be out at night and you got to wine and dine your clients, but you still got to show up and account for whoever it is that works with you. And so I was like, what if you sent them in? And it's like, oh, sir, your 9 o'clock is here. And the guy comes in or gal comes in and she's wearing a business suit, has, the briefcase, whatever, come to talk, sits down. The guy just kicks his head back in his desk, gets the IV drip, sends that for like 45 minutes. And then suddenly the 10 o'clock board meeting is not so bad. I think there's money there.
What if you assembled a whole squad of FBI agents like GS-13s, and they could deploy anywhere around the country in the $60 million jet to hit up the SAC when they tied one on the night before? That seems like a good use of the taxpayer money.
Isn't that called Criminal Minds?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I love that BAU squad, man. They always fly in the Learjet, even though that squad never leaves Quantico.
How many times did BAU come out and help you with your Indian crimes?
Not a one. I had one interaction with BAU. It was actually for a CT case, and it was a individual who they thought there was a small chance they might go and shoot a school. And the BAU said, we suggest you don't contact him because it might radicalize him. So I think they should go back to their old name, which was the Behavioral Science Unit, better known as the BS Unit.
Yes, that's good. The BSU. Let's kind of dig into that for 1 second, though, because I think it actually has a lot to do with what we're going to talk about today. Everybody expects that the FBI is one thing. It's a group of people that are highly professional that jump on a jet. It's a behavioral analysis unit that goes out there and solves serial killer murders, which it doesn't actually do very often or ever. Sometimes they'll give you like a profile on a bank robber, and you're like, he's just a dude who's robbing a bank. He drives
the bombers are the best.
Yeah, the bomber
It's
profile.
30-year-old white male who might have been abused and set fires when he was little.
That's right.
Can I apply to the unit?
Yes, you're good to go. I think you're actually hired. Sorry, your security clearance has been revoked. So they do one thing in everybody's mind, and then in reality, they're doing something completely different, right? Like they have absolutely nothing to do with what people think is going on, and they're spending their resources going after banks that are lending based on fair lending practices. We got this article. This is going to be. I called it DOJ strikes again. Topic number 7. Ryan, can you bring that up real quick? I want to have Steve kind of look into this because Steve is kind of a finance guy, and this happens in your backyard. Okay, this is Washington Post, where democracy dies in darkness if you are not paying attention. A bank denied loans to blacks and Hispanics has to pay a $9 million fine. Well, you think, well, that's good. We want that. We want the banks that are being racist to do that. Justice Department officials tout the deal as progress in efforts to combat discriminatory lending in minority communities. So right off the bat, you're like, okay, I'm on team DOJ. They're doing the right thing. Thank God for what they're doing. The bank denies all wrongdoing. And the bank basically said, we were not giving out loans to people who didn't have the credit to have the loan because it was a bad investment, for our banking, for our company, which is what we do. We're just a group of people trying to make money. And one of the things we do is we do risk analysis, and these were higher risk clients. And Unfortunately for them, that means that the Justice Department came in and said, well, you've got about $25 billion worth of assets. And that means that you're racist. You are a redlining jerk. And so, even though the chief executive over there said, we strongly disagree with any suggestion that we have engaged in discriminatory conduct, and we're confident that our efforts to provide equal access to affordable mortgages products in the Jacksonville community and all markets we serve, we've fully cooperated with the department's inquiry, and we've entered into this settlement to avoid the distraction of litigation. Read that as cost of the litigation, because we share the department's goal of expanding access to home ownership. Do you know what the penalty was there, Mr. Steve? You know what the penalty was for them just agreeing that like they don't want to get into a fight with the DOJ? You see how much money was involved?
$9 million.
$9 million was the payment settlement that they have to pay out to people who were aggrieved, even though they just made it up. It's a made up asset class or a made up victim class. They also had to offer $7.5 million in loan subsidies for residents of majority Black and Hispanic neighborhoods and spend $1 million in advertising to let the people know that they can come get this $7.5 million in loan subsidies. Now, here's the fun thing. Biden's America. I don't know if you've had your house looked at or revalued recently, but in the last 2 years, housing prices have jumped pretty staggeringly. So that $7.5 million will buy 11 houses.
Especially in Jacksonville. Yeah.
Yeah. You're going to help out like almost no one, basically. But they did. But they're down $20 million, essentially, simply for going to war with the DOJ.
And do you think that that's not going to be passed on to the customers in any way, shape, or form?
Wait a minute. Are you telling me that as a business, that the goal is to take costs that are sunk in and part of your logistical chain, and then you just make the customer pay for it? The other customers, do you spread it across like a bunch of backs?
No, that's just magic pixie dust that you sprinkle on it to create more money in your coffers to cover that.
It's the sad ignorance of this. Do people actually think this is a win? Because here's the question: is this a marketing campaign that works for anybody? If you were to go out there and say, I don't know, talk to somebody in your community and pitch this story, how does it land?
It doesn't land well if anybody actually takes the time to read the article and think through a critical thought process on it. Look, there's actuarial tables. It's a very automated process when it comes to giving you a loan. Like there's a reason you can just pick up the phone and in like a 5-minute conversation with a bank, they can be like, well, we can loan you this much money, because the guy on the phone isn't really assessing you. He's just punching these numbers into a computer system and he pushes it out. And that's clearly what they did here. And these people might have had bad credit. They might have had some bankruptcies in their past. So for some reason, the computer system said this person's not a good candidate to receive a loan for a house. And then the banker said, okay, we have to follow that protocol. I can't just go with my gut, and the pigment in your skin makes you good for that.
Yeah, your last name is Washington, so we know that you're a bad credit risk. It's like
I was actually surprised that
50 years ago, maybe. 50 years ago, maybe.
But the punishment, and this was something that Vivek Ramaswamy wrote about in Woke Capitalism, that often what will happen in these cases is there will be a settlement, and they'll say you can either do this, $9 million payout and then this $7.5 million campaign, or you can make charitable donations to this approved list of candidates, and it'll be tax deductible. So it'll actually be good for you to do that. And the list will obviously be anybody who's ESG or DEI or whoever's going to push the electoral prospects of the Democrat Party.
It's legalized extortion.
Yes.
Is there any difference between actual extortion and what these guys do? Because that's the real thing that I was seeing when I was reading it.
There's a force of obviously a force of violence typically with extortion in some way, but this one actually has the ability to jail you. And
they're not just going to break your legs. They're not just going to release your blackmail material. They're going to take your freedom and maybe your life.
This is consistent with another story that I think it was yesterday or the day before the DOJ came out with, that they came out with a report on advising local law enforcement agencies who are having problems hiring and retaining officers. And the takeaway was, we need more diversity, equity, and inclusion to keep good cops on the street. The people that are making these determinations have no connection with reality. They're assuming that racism is the reason that they can't keep cops on the force. They're assuming that racism is the reason that people who have bad credit can't get a loan. It's people that exist in this academic world, even if they're not a nefarious actor, they just can't represent in their head what real reality is, because they've never existed in it. They've gone from elite academic institutions in high school and college directly into government. They live in ivory towers. They've never gone into an Applebee's and seen what the price of mozzarella sticks is as a result of their policies.
I don't recommend going into an Applebee's. The last time I remember being in an Applebee's, because I'm trying to remember, like, have I been? The last time I went in was with my surveillance team, my SOG team, in Albuquerque, New Mexico, in, let's say, spring, lest we get too specific, spring of 2020. I don't want to highlight what case it was, but it was a CT case we were working. And it was the only thing that was open on this desolate highway. And it was right during the COVID lockdowns. So everybody else was shut down except Applebee's. It was literally like looking at a sole pillar of light in an otherwise blacked out city. It was absolutely bizarre. Like there was one building that had their own generator. Like that was Applebee's.
Oasis.
Everything else was dark around it because Albuquerque is not very nice after dark. There's some real shady parts of it. We were in a shady part of it because it's where the Applebee's was. And I remember sitting there going like, I can't remember the last time I've been into an Applebee's, and I can't remember the next time that I'm gonna be in an Applebee's.
The last time I was
I
in
like
one,
Chili's. I'm a Chili's guy. Can I just say that?
Yeah. Look, do you remember? I mean, you're a few years older than me, but we're relatively similar in age. Like
he said, I'm the gray in my beard.
No, I'm the good Roman. I'd be wearing a toga. You'd be the Visigoth coming over the wall.
Right. Who wins?
But there was a time where, like, Friday night at Applebee's, standing 45-minute wait to get in.
For sure.
To get relatively marginal food. And the last time I actually had it was the night before I got my badge and credentials from Quantico. My family flew out for my graduation, and we weren't really familiar with the area, and we just saw like, well, you know, at least what you're going to get at Applebee's. So we just rolled in there.
Yeah, food and an American diner experience that is the same everywhere and not very good. We get this barbecue place. We get this barbecue place here in Texas. It's called Rudy's. And I don't have a very sophisticated barbecue palate. I'm going to sadden every single person out here, but my barbecue palate is not like very developed. I wouldn't be like, oh, that's a fantastic example of North Carolina barbecue. Like, this is really more of a Kansas City tang. It's got sweetness. I know what they are. I know what these things are. I know there's a little bit of sour on the East Coast. If you go to North Carolina, I know it's sweeter if you go to Kansas City, and Texas is a little bit more twangy and more peppery. Okay, fine. I actually know those things, so I'm not like a total neophyte. But if you were to give me barbecue and put them side by side, I wouldn't be like, I'd wait in line like 4 hours for that. Like, oh, I would just only get that at the drive-thru. There's a place called Rudy's, and it's constantly like a 3.5 to 4 out of 5. And you can walk in and order it and walk out with it in seconds, or you can spend like hours and hours. There's a place in Austin called Franklin's Barbecue. I don't know if they're still doing it, but I'm sure they are. They have like a multi-hour wait to get their food. The only person that's ever skipped the line was President Barack Obama. I was in Austin when that happened. He literally became the only person, and he was pretending like he was going to be in the line, and the Secret Service was like, no, we're going to bribe people up front or whatever. So he skipped the line, was able to go up there and get his food, and then he was like, oh, I'll buy it for the people around me because I'm such a folksy guy. So he bought it for like the 3 people behind him, meanwhile screwing over like, hundreds of people in the line. It's a line every day. I would never wait 4 hours for barbecue. I would never wait an hour and a half for Chili's if Applebee's was available. But I don't think anybody should wait for either of those things because they're not that good. No. And you know what's sad? That's who we have for president right now. We have Applebee's for president. It's like, it's president, like it's a person that sits at the desk. It has calories. You can eat it. You won't die from it yet. But that's who our president is, sitting in the White House. I want you to listen to what this guy had to say, and we'll go back and we'll touch California assault weapon ban in a second here. Joe really wants to be like a really serious president. He compared himself to Abraham Lincoln, which I think is always really good. Let's see. Let's do video number 3 first, Ryan, and then we're going to follow it up almost immediately with video number 2. So if you want to put those in your head to cue it up, and then we'll play it. It's just, this guy is so strange, but he really wants you to know how tough he is, and this goes back to his days of like fighting corn pop. He has this legend in his own mind. Okay, video 3 first. It's very short.
I've made wartime decisions. I know the choices are never clear or easy for the leadership. There's always cost.
Yeah, do that one again. Do it again. There's always cost. He's a wartime president.
I've made wartime decisions. I know the choices are never clear or easy for the leadership. There's always cost.
Okay, now Applebee's for president here, as I saw in the chat. Let's do video number 2. He's a wartime president. You know how wartime he was, Steve? He did secret stuff. Let's do a secret video from Joe Biden exposing his secrets.
Earlier this year, I boarded Air Force One for a secret flight to Poland. There I boarded a train with blacked out windows for a 10-hour ride each way to Kyiv to stand with the people of Ukraine ahead of the 1-year anniversary of their brave fight against Putin. I'm told I was the first American to enter a war zone not controlled by the United States military since President Lincoln. With me was just a small group of security personnel and a few advisors.
There it is. He got in a blacked out train. He's done 1 million miles on Amtrak. It's Joe Biden. He's the first guy to ever do this since Lincoln, which he mispronounced. But, we know what he meant. What do you think, Steve?
I mean, maybe he had that conversation with Lincoln to determine if that was true, like, because he's about the same age as Abe. But it's patently ridiculous.
Maybe he was just in the Lincoln bedroom and was playing with his train set. What do you think? Is that possible?
No American has ever set foot in a war zone not controlled by America. Like, have you ever heard of a private military contractor, bro?
I don't know. He said it. Must be true. That's what he does.
He's made wartime decisions like abandoning an airstrip in the middle of Afghanistan with billions of dollars of war material to the Taliban, and letting 13 service members be killed. I mean, look, he's made those decisions. There's been costs, which inconvenienced him. Why he was looking at his watch the entire time that those 13 service members' remains were returned to our country.
You're bringing back a lot of snarky sense, but it's true. How many scandals? Like, you remember when they were talking about how Barack Obama only had one scandal, and it was that he wore a tan suit? The tan suit scandal. I feel like Biden has so many scandals that you can't even remember which ones they are. You're like, are you talking about the thing about his kid with the pornography, or like the underage, or like him buying crack on his own cell phone camera? Are you talking about the millions of dollars that came in from like foreign investments that were investing in like nothing but except him? Or you talk about when he had the Russians that were blackmailing him because they stole his laptop, and then it was apparently an FBI put-up job, but the FBI was covering for him? Or are you talking about when he just got a bunch of people killed? Or are you talking about when he took the blacked out train to Kyiv so he could stand with the people of Ukraine that no one ever heard of? Where are the photo ops from that? And
they could play the air raid sirens, even though there hadn't been any munitions dropped in that area. And do you think for a second Secret Service would let him go and walk while air raid sirens were going off?
It's very easy. I
He
just recommend people
up and walked and carried out of there with his feet occasionally striking the ground. Because
they would they would hoist him like a log PT and run.
Yes.
Which I've done log PT. It's no fun. I think Joe Biden would actually be equally stiff and brick-like, but also kind of flabby and softer. It'd probably be easier than log PT. Log PT always like catches some part of your body.
Dead weight, man. Dead weight. You got the newborn now. When they go limp, when they're tired, like it adds
fine with that.
A lot.
No, there's like a bunch of real men that are actually doing protection. Well, maybe they'd have some women on there for diversity, and then you'd have like sort of a low spot. You'd have like a slink in the pelvis area. Whoever's carrying the pelvis would just be a low spot. Here's the thing. If anybody wants to hear about whether or not this is legit, just listen to Dan Bongino's take on this. You can go back a ways. A guy who did the advance to war zones, who has spent time on the presidential detail. Zero chance was his analysis that this was going on and legit. They literally probably just had them play the air raid siren to make it look cool, so he could put on his aviators. If they could have gotten something to blow up in the background so they could do the MacGruber piece, like cool guys don't look at explosions, I think Joe's PR team would have been like, yeah, this is a great idea. This is fantastic. We should do that. We should blow something up behind him.
Yeah, he should do like the Tony Stark Iron Man 1, where they shoot the Jericho missile and have it explode behind him.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what you need. You need just some video of something. Yeah, Dark Brandon. I got a random, I'm trying to find it. Folks, if you watch this on YouTube, you may actually catch a Dark Brandon clip. I've been looking for it. There's a second Dark Brandon though, and it's even dumber. Like the first one is really weak, where he's like trying to figure out like what the coffee, like he's never drank coffee out of a mug. They must just inject him at this point, or he opens his mouth like a bird and they shoot it in with a syringe. But he's like, and he sips it weirdly and it makes noises. Then he puts it back down. And then he has the Dark Brandon thing. The new one says something like, I'd be okay with this thing, but he won't. And he is the mug. He's referring to his mug, which is a picture of himself with the laser eyes. It made me want to puke, and I went looking for it. I'm like, I'm going to put that in the show. I'm going to make everybody vomit. Everyone's going to be grossed out by how disgustingly pathetic this dude is. And I couldn't find it, but it's out there. Someone has it.
It randomly popped up. For me as well. And I look, it's an advertisement for you, for your campaign. Like, I don't know what you're trying to say with that at all. Like,
he's trying to say you need a $35 Chinese-made coffee mug because the millions they gave him direct deposit is not enough for him to run his campaign from the basement, where he's not going to come outside and have 3 minutes of question time. It's 3 minutes. Remember, he's got 2 words for you. What are the 2 words?
It's 3 letters. JOBS. Job.
Yeah, Yeah, it's 3 letters. It's so,
and he's gonna be hurting up. The Biden family's gonna be hurting now. As I saw the meme, which is like my new favorite meme of the Indiana Jones scene where he's swapping out the statue for the bag of sand, and it's the Ukraine flag swapped out for the Israeli flag.
Look what Ryan's doing to us.
I like my coffee dark.
That's so gay. There's no other way to say it. I grew up in the 80s. That's the gayest thing I've ever seen. An old man acting tough, weirdly slamming down his mug that has a picture of himself.
We desperately need to make bullying great again.
We do, and we should shame this old man. You know, he's the guy that's like, yeah, you want to go behind the gym. Like, imagine if Trump went behind the gym with him and like box it out. I actually put money on Trump. I think Trump heavyweights him.
I want to see them do the sumo wrestling suit competition with each other, where they strap them in with those giant like padded suits and see who gets knocked down first. I think that would be a way to resolve any sort of electoral issues.
Yes, indeed. All right. Earlier in the chat, I saw Chad Zodi, who I want to say a great shout out to. He said that Jesus is the original suspendable, the king of the suspendables. I think that's actually true in more ways than one. I want to say something real quickly. Give me a big full screen here, Ryan, and we will promote our buddy Garrett O'Boyle. You guys came through big time the other day. I think there was like 9 orders right after our show, which is kind of wild. You can go to the-suspendables.com, the-suspendables.com, get some of the merch. Keep supporting our buddy out there. I'm going to have an announcement pretty soon from some of their stuff. My Suspendables gear, which I ordered myself at the-suspendables.com. I got the Spotify or whatever it's called, Shopify thing. It's coming in, and I'm going to have it by the end of today. So by Monday, I will have new merch and apparently some limited edition stuff that we're going to announce. But this is my hat. You guys can check out the hats. There's this new dark bundle that he accidentally made. Forget Dark Brandon. There's a Night Ops version that Garrett made on accident, which I'll have him come on and talk about, and he'll probably wear the only one right now as he starts making them. Guys, you can get your pins. You can add 3 of them. You get $30 if you add 3 to the cart. It's free shipping. Promo code Kyle, Kyle, gets you 10% off. Use promo code Kyle wherever you go. If you're using a website and promo code Kyle doesn't work, then try another one. But it might get you 10% off anywhere you shop until I tell you otherwise. We appreciate that. All right, Steve, I'm going to play you the video. Ready? I just want you, I haven't showed you this video yet. We're talking about Biden. We're talking about Dark Brandon in his own mind, the legend war president. Listen to the first, Ryan, we're going to do about 90 seconds of this, maybe like a minute and 40 seconds or so. I'll give you a cutoff. I want you to listen to this and tell me if he catches you by surprise. If you need to laugh in the middle of this, he says something very, very shocking at one point, and it's going to catch you off guard if you're listening carefully. So let's do video number 6. Let's see this guy, Dark Brandon, as he lays it out for the American people last night. He was laying out the case for why we can't deal with terrorists.
I know these conflicts can seem far away, and it's natural to ask, why does this matter to America? So let me share with you why making sure Israel and Ukraine succeed is vital for America's national security. You know, history has taught us that when terrorists don't pay a price for their terror, when dictators don't pay a price for their aggression, they cause more chaos and death and more destruction. They keep going. And the cost and the threats to America and the world keep rising. So if we don't stop Putin's appetite for power and control in Ukraine, he won't limit himself just to Ukraine. Putin's already threatened to remind Poland that their western land was a gift from Russia. One of his top advisors, a former president of Russia, has called Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania Russia's Baltic provinces. These are all NATO allies. For 75 years, NATO has kept peace in Europe and has been the cornerstone of American security. And if Putin attacks a NATO ally, we will defend every inch of NATO which the treaty requires and calls for. We'll have something.
All right, that's good. That's as much as I can handle with him. Everyone's making fun of his chin. Did you hear him say that? He said we got to make sure that we weigh in on the Israel-Hamas conflict. We need to make sure, and that's why Putin can't win. The logical leap between he's talking about the terrorists can't win, but we also got to somehow do. You're exactly right with the Indiana Jones thing. Describe that to people what the scene actually is, so they can kind of imagine the meme.
Yeah, that's Raiders of the Last Ark, right? That
it is. Yes.
Yeah.
It's the
so
first
that's
one.
actually it's not actually
The
called
opening
Indiana
scenes.
Jones. It's the opening scene of Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yep.
And he's going into the temple. And he's trying to swap out the artifact for this sandbag, and it has to be equal weight, and doesn't want the thing to trigger, so he does it real fast, and obviously it triggers, and he has a giant stone chasing after him then. Awesome scene. But the meme that I saw was they put the Ukrainian flag on the artifact, and it's being swapped out for the Israeli flag because it's just going to be a misdirection. It's the head fake here that you talked about earlier.
Yeah, Americans, are you buying it? Did you figure it out? Do you think that he can get away with it? Can he move the Ukraine, switch it over? And they want like $100 billion for Israel now.
Yeah, and as opposed to just getting rid of their policies that caused the problems over with Gaza, they just want to throw money at it because that's the solution to everything, and also it lines their own pockets because it's going to make sure that their donors and the military-industrial complex keeps going. And look, Glitch McConnell has said, like, well, we got to send this equipment over Ukraine because it creates an opportunity for us to replenish our own from our new.
He said it right there. Yeah. We have to keep buying new stuff. Otherwise, my donors from the military-industrial complex aren't going to keep paying my bills.
Yeah.
Someone's got to pay his life support bills, I assume.
These guys,
they could touch him and turn him off.
This is the one upside of the geriocracy is like they say the quiet part out loud on a fairly regular basis. And they don't comprehend that everything they say is now on the record and memorialized by videotape or cameras or phones.
Yes.
They think that they can tell the same lie that they told in the 60s and get away with it, which is why Biden and the like continue to trot out I fought against corn pop with a rusty razor.
Yes, indeed. Listen to this. Okay, so Ryan, I just sent you another video that just occurred to me. I wanted you to do so. Check our show prep and cue that one up. So you just said they say the quiet part out loud. They say the thing that they used to be able to get away with. I watched a 1970s movie with Angela Lansbury, which is a classic, called Bedknobs and Broomsticks. Did you watch that as a kid?
No.
Okay, no problem. But neither had either my mother or my mother-in-law. I can't even remember who was sitting and watching. I think it was my mother-in-law, but it might have been my mom. Somebody was sitting there with my kids watching this thing, and they'd never seen it. And so Angela Lansbury, this is back when she was not old, although she was always kind of old. She was prettier and younger, but she was like still Angela Lansbury, so she's still doing Murder, She Wrote.
Yeah, I know. Okay. I know what you're talking about.
Okay, so the best part of it is you're watching that, and she flies around. She's a witch. She's a witch, and she's trying to help out the British war effort, which right now feels very sacrilegious and weird. But she's a witch, and she has a broomstick, and she's flying around, and you can see the wires because they catch glint. But I know you couldn't see them then. But because we have a 4K TV, because technology has evolved, we can actually see the wires better because the actual capture, as they've gone back and remastered it, you can see the glinting of the wires and the strings that are holding up the different items because there's all these flying pieces, there's flying suits of armor. And you can legit see these things only because time has advanced, the technology is there. And in the same way, this geriocracy has people that are now giving us kind of a glimpse behind the curtain, but they're not doing it on purpose. It's just like the technology has advanced and they haven't. They're still ancient. So we've got this video. Miranda Devine tweeted this out and she said, I want to get off the planet. Miranda is great. I don't want Miranda off the planet. This guy's about to leave the planet, obviously. Check out this video right now, and I'll give you just we'll just let you just react to it without any kind of prep. But this is also from last night's speech. He pulled another repeat the line. Okay. So I'm sure you guys will really appreciate this. This is the guy that has the nuclear codes, ladies and gentlemen. All right, Ryan, whenever you're ready, just send it.
And if Putin attacks a NATO ally, we will defend every inch of NATO which the treaty requires and calls for. We'll have something that we do not seek. Make it clear, we do not seek. We do not seek to have American troops fighting in Russia or fighting against Russia.
Did you guys hear that? Play one more time, just so people can hear it. He doesn't want to play hide and seek.
And if Putin attacks a NATO ally, we will defend every inch of NATO which the treaty requires and calls for. We'll have something that we do not seek. Make it clear, we do not seek. We do not seek to have American troops fighting in Russia or fighting against Russia.
Okay, make it clear. Joe Biden versus teleprompter. Teleprompter, how many right now at this point?
I mean, I think that this is a Roberto Duran no mas situation. There's been a bloodletting for a number of years here.
Who's still putting those prompts in? Yeah,
he fumbles it.
He fumbled the line because he was trying to figure out what that parenthetical thing meant, make it clear. And so what I took away from that, because he's a very, very serious man and we're a very, very serious country that has a very, very serious person in charge of it. I understand that he does not want to be the seeker. He's only interested in hiding. Does that sound correct? Make it clear. America will not be involved in the seek, just hiding. Maybe all the money for Ukraine.
Did Kamala Harris write that speech for him? and just the aesthetics of it. Like, look, I've said it before. The apothecary gets him the dosage he needs right before it come out, and his pupils are like dilated, like out of control, which is why he squints all the time. There's no whites of his eyes, and he's probably they just need to up the dosage. Yeah, he's got those soulless black shark eyes.
What if they were able to actually, I mean, since it's all sort of like they're putting him on a set where it doesn't make any sense, he's not even in the real White House anymore. Why don't they just CGI lasers coming out of his eyes? Because that's what they want to do anyway. Don't do that to us, Ryan. Don't do that. Don't zoom in on that old man.
I was just relieved that we could avoid the very expressive sign linguist that's always on the whitehouse.gov live stream. Her face
she was there.
More disturbing than his. I mean, she is like really fired up to be signing everything he says. But I mean, like, good on her. She's got to deal with not only the prepared remarks, but the parenthetical ones.
Right. But she can, yeah, she's trying to figure out, she was like, this wasn't on the script. I wasn't prepared for make it clear. It's too much. I don't know why people still think that's acceptable. The funny thing is that it's not unique to just Biden. His entire administration is full of idiots that they don't answer questions. Have you ever noticed they'll say, as you know? They assume knowledge that's not present. They do as you know all the time. This is Kareem Jean-Pierre's favorite thing. It was what was Raggedy Ann's name? What was her name?
Jen Psaki.
Jen Psaki.
Yeah, but she had a funnier name. She was
Peppermint Patty.
Peppermint Patty, but she was called something else. They had another nasty name for her. Anyhow, this lady, they all say it. None of them can actually like come up with a real answer. They just sort of like do this filibuster until the interview is over. Whenever they're on any kind of like, they're asked like, God forbid, a serious question. Here's CNN. This one's actually pretty fun. How do you make sure that Hamas doesn't get $100 million to do bombs, weapons, tunnels, or whatever else they do? How do you make sure it just goes into like actual humanitarian supplies? Listen to this answer. Listen to the question, because like she sets him up and he's just like, oh no. Now I have to just ad-lib this for a little while. This is going to be video number 4, the Quattro. Go ahead and send video number 4. Steve, you just tell me if this guy ever answered the question to your satisfaction.
The president pledged $100 million in an aid package to Palestinian civilians, innocent civilians in Gaza and the West Bank. How is the United States going to ensure that none of that ends up in the hands of Hamas?
Well, as you know, this was a primary focus of the president's diplomacy yesterday, both in Israel, where he met with the entire Israeli security establishment, but also in his phone conversations with regional leaders, including President al-Sisi of Egypt. Getting assistance into Gaza is a complicated undertaking. It involves essentially securing an understanding among Hamas fighters who control the checkpoint on the other side of the border, among the government of Israel and among the government of Egypt. And the agreement the president secured will enable these trucks to flow as soon as the roadway can be repaired. But the president was also quite clear that if this assistance goes in, it cannot be misappropriated, cannot be taken by Hamas fighters for their own purposes. And so we're going to be watching that very closely. It has to get to Palestinian civilians who need it.
It has to. But the question is, from what you just said, is the U.S. then essentially in a position where it has to take the word of Hamas that it will not be taken? I mean, what other guarantee can there be?
We believe there is an understanding now among all of the players who control that crossing, the Rafah crossing in Egypt.
Yeah, we believe there's an understanding. Listen, we took the word of the Taliban that they only put the right people on the plane, and there are no terrorists on the planes because the Taliban, who we fought for 20 years, has told us so. And so we have an understanding, and that's why we gave them $80 billion worth of weapons, right? Like, she asked the question twice. Like, good on her. She actually asked the question. You never see CNN actually try to hold their feet to the fire. They're like, but John, really, are you just going to have to agree with him? And he was like, yeah, no, but they said, just trust me, bro. And so that's actually, and they posted it on the internet. So it's unfalsifiable.
Which is why he had that second follow-up was so important, because he had run out of ammunition. It was basically, let me ask you about the thing. And he says, well, thank you for asking me about the thing. It's very important to us about the thing. And we're working really hard to consider all elements of the thing. Back to you.
Yeah, they've thought about, And
now it's like your friend used to say, I told you I was sorry.
Yeah, my buddy Carl used to do this. Folks, if you haven't listened to this, Steve is digging deep into my archives of my history, but my buddy used to always do this thing. This is a real interesting trick. The trick is this: you never apologize, you just claim that you did angrily, and you move the emotional needle. So my buddy would do something and I'd be like, dude, I can't believe you just did that. And he would go, dude, I said I'm sorry. And I'd be like, oh, I guess I'm mistaken. And suddenly you're on the back foot. They do this little like dance where now they've talked about it. You know, the truck came at just the right time. I don't know who they paid off to like drive the truck to make it loud. So it was like, traffic's really picking up. Our stand-up interview is going to be over. They move on. By the way, Ginger Goebbels was the term I was looking for. Ginger Goebbels was the name for Peppermint Patty that I found to be the most solid because she was out there lying to our faces and we just had to accept it.
She could at least put a sentence together.
She could.
And
but as you know, as the president has said many times, some unoriginal answer to something that the president has said many times. And then if she couldn't, she would always just like look through her binder and then,
as you know, I mean, and they all have their catchphrases. Like I think Barack Obama's was always like, let me be clear. And the notion that, and then everybody within the administration would just adopt that. And I think that this is the latest iteration that's gone throughout their press office of the White House.
Luckily, they haven't picked up on the "it's not a joke" because if I have to hear Sideshow Bob or any of these spokespeople, John Kirby, telling us it's no joke, man.
I would love. How much would you just die laughing if you had to see Karine Jean-Pierre say, "I give you my word as a gay black woman," like Biden says. I give you my word as a Biden. I give you my word as whatever.
His qualifications for president is that he's a Biden, right?
Yes.
A corrupt Biden. And her qualifications are essentially her sexual preference and her skin color. That'd be
unprecedented. That's
stunning and brave.
Mm-hmm.
So stunning, still brave. All right. Let's do another one of these things. There's a couple of other weird stories that we're going to kind of touch on. We had a listener actually call one to my attention, which I think is worth following up on. I do want to just sort of show you John Kirby. You want to know the difference between what the president normally looks like, where they like do a walk and talk. You've seen this with a stand up. We've all seen this, guys. Anybody who's ever been in a corporation or who's ever worked for a government agency, there's always some idiot that like has a camera and they're slowly panning it backwards. And that person's like not naturally talking and walking in some place where they wouldn't naturally move so slowly, but they're trying to talk and walk and make it dynamic. John Kirby did that, trying to pitch the trip that the White House was involved in. And this was the trip that they did. This is before he went to Israel. Obviously, no blacked out trains in Israel. They don't have a train system that has blacked out windows. So that's unfortunate. He won't be able to make those claims. But John Kirby was telling us how important it was. I don't know. It just feels so illogical. It feels so staged and weak that I just like watching it. And I like sort of laughing at them. And he's infinitely more confident and capable than the guy who actually got elected, which is also really, really scary. And if you're just joining us, we're doing Friendly Friday. We always have our buddy, FBI whistleblower, author, and Center for Renewing America fellow, Real Steve Friend, who's going to be commenting on our buddy John Kirby here. Let's play this video here. Folks, if you haven't given us a thumbs up or a like on Rumble, please do. Let's do this video. Here's the White House telling us how super important it was that they go to Israel in the middle of a wartime for nobody knows why. That's video number 7, by the way, Ryan. Sorry. Let's run it.
Hi, I'm John Kirby, National Security Council Coordinator for Strategic Communications, and I just want to spend a minute talking about this very important trip that President Biden will be making to the Middle East starting today. He will have 2 stops, Tel Aviv and Amman, Jordan. In both these stops, he will talk about how important it is for the United States and other partners to stand up for Israel and allow them to continue to defend themselves against Hamas terrorists. The United States support will stay strong and steady. We'll also send a strong signal of deterrence for any other actor in the region that might try to widen or deepen this conflict. Of course, the president will also spend time talking with leaders in Israel and in Jordan about the plight of those hostages that Hamas is holding, including some Americans. We want to make sure we get them home to their families, and we're working in concert with all our partners to do that. And of course, he will spend a lot of time talking about the humanitarian situation in Gaza for the Palestinian people. We want to make sure that humanitarian assistance, food, water, medicine can continue to flow to them as they need it, and that there is safe passage for those that need to get out. This is a critical time, a critical trip, and a very important opportunity, not just for the president, but for leaders across the region, to make sure that we send a strong signal to terrorists and a strong signal to innocent civilians who are impacted by this conflict.
He made a brief mention that there are some American hostages that are being held by a terrorist organization, but no plan. Did you see the picture that the White House released, just kind of doxing and putting out the face of all these Delta Force operators the other day?
Yeah, and then they took about an hour to pull it down. I mean,
hundreds of thousands of views. Right. That's because we have children running this stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and they probably are about 22 years old, and they don't know that that's kind of an important thing that you should not expose. But
somebody asked, why do these guys even agree to that? It's like, well, the commander in chief is the guy in charge of the military. If he says he's going to shake your hand, then you do. And you sort of assume that he understands how sensitive is the work you do because he gets the briefs on him and he has the clearance to know it. Like, he's the top guy. He can classify or declassify anything. You think that they would actually want to protect the identities of these men that they spend so many years and so much time trying to be quiet professionals and just be the best that they are. And then you go out there and you just expose them. And you can see they're all studs. I mean, that's the best America has physically, like for anything.
Well, yeah. And by head and shoulders typically, and then now with the new standards where they basically, like, if you got 2 arms, 2 legs, you're in, as long as it's not a felony conviction, we're good.
Right. That kind of tees up something we talked about, the DOJ. We saw that it was doing this stupid thing going after and threatening banks. People used to think that the FBI was an elite crime fighting organization. Do you want to kind of set up this thing here? Actually, Ryan, if you want to put Steve on the screen, I'll let him just talk through this story from topic number 8, which is pretty gross and pretty funny. But this is the elite crime fighting units of DOJ.
This was a story that came out a couple weeks ago, and I've always been joking that Garrett and I could probably do a full-time podcast just on the FBI's 70 Twitter accounts for all the different field offices because it's just so absurd. But it is talking here and taking credit for sentencing a serial armed robber in the Tampa office. And if you just look at the headline, you think, all right, FBI is involved in violent crime. They're doing the Lord's work there. Keep it up, boys. But you just have to read the article and read the statement and to find out that the subject here, it's 2 guys, but the one who got 17 years, he and his buddy went and robbed 2 auto parts stores in one day on August 29th, 2021 for a grand total of $1,140.
Yeah, I'm going to read this real quick. It's Brown and Jackson, the conspirators, robbed 2 auto parts stores in the Tampa area, August 29, 2021. They first drove from Jackson's house in the neighborhood of Tampa where the auto parts store was. Then they carried firearms and wore surgical masks. As they went in, they brandished firearms, demanded money from the store employees, and they got $300 from the registers. Then they went to the second store, and as you said, a grand total of $1,140 taken in this serial robbery of auto parts stores that the Tampa police did all the work on.
The Tampa police arrested him that day.
Yeah.
They located him. They in a vehicle with about $900 left, so he only spent a couple $100. And I have to assume he's been in custody since then. But the FBI has its Safe Streets Task Force that has to check its box and sees a really easy opportunity to come in with an adoption because they'll say, well, they used a firearm that was produced outside the state of Florida, across state lines, was used here. We're going to take this, and we're going to not actually do any investigation, no manhunting. The guy's already in custody. Just give us your paperwork. We'll take it over to the U.S. Attorney's Office, and we'll charge him. And now over 2 years have gone by, so 3 fiscal years where they've been able to have this on the books and claim credit for it, and he gets sentenced to 17 years in prison, and the FBI can claim, well, this is part of our effort to confront violent crime around the nation. You're welcome. They've done nothing. They've done nothing, and the local police had it done in less than 1 shift. It might have been the same actual police officers on the street as when the robbery occurred, when he got arrested.
That's exactly right. Yeah, but adopting these things, you want to tell people, so this was under the Safe Neighborhoods program, which we believe is part of the Safe Streets Task Force kind of operations. That's when the FBI goes in and does local crime and steals like a bunch of gun cases or serial robber cases, apparently. But they had a brother program, sister program, a cousin program maybe, that was operating out on the res that you worked on. You want to tell people what that was called? Definitely not racist to call it
cousin
this.
brother program, like the way they like to say it. Yeah, they it's definitely not racist because they had to come up with something new and novel and get something to promote on. They call it the Safe Trails Task Force because apparently they don't have cement on Indian reservations.
None.
And they're all just like putting their ear to the ground as they're tracking because they're FBI's understanding of what happens on Indian reservations stopped at John Wayne movies.
Yeah, so the safe trails because safe teepees was used.
Probably a little too over the top.
Right.
I mean, I used to joke like, hey, I don't need a backup because I can clear a teepee with one man. There's no corner to dig.
Did anyone even know what you were talking about?
It's a basic close quarter battle, room clearing, man. You got to go in and dig the corner, but there's no corner, obviously.
It's just a circular room. You just poke your head in the tent and go, well, that's that. What's funny is that I had a lady from FBI Security Division who was investigating me, anybody who's listened to the audio that goes back, it's the beginning of my channel, and you can actually go back and hear it. I told her that working Indian reservation crimes was the lowest priority for national security in the FBI and not cared about by anyone outside of the people who actually do the work. And those of us who did it really like it because it's interesting work. And she said, well, I'm going to have to disagree with you. It's like a spider web. If you pull on one of the threads, all of the web will vibrate. And I was like, you've never been to a res in your life. You have no idea what you're talking about. But that's FBI headquarters for you.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, they just have no clue.
That sounds like something that Joe Biden would say off script, off prompter.
And she probably thinks that serial robber case of two dudes that are holding up a couple of auto parts stores, they got Napa and O'Reilly's in the same day, right?
Yes.
And they were probably going to get AutoZone next. And so that's a cereal, not breakfast cereal. It was a serious cereal. $1,100 robbery. That's what your FBI is doing. Not going after complex fraud, not going after people who have been scammed out of, literally, we've turned away hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of fraud cases. I had to turn down a $50,000 fraud case where people pulled up in a truck and they loaded up a bunch of building materials. They gave a fraudulent credit card number and they ran it and they left the country with it, by all accounts. And it's like, that was everything those people had. It was a small mom and pop business in a small area, turned down, didn't meet the threshold.
And we should be clear, like, we don't think that these guys didn't deserve to go to jail for a substantial amount of time.
Yeah,
but
the cops just got
I
them
can
already.
clearly see the cops did a good job on that one. And I think Bill Shipley responded when I shared this on my X profile. He said, well, look, the federal route gets a heavier sentence, so it makes sense. I agree, which is why we should give federal deputization to police officers who actually can choose their own adventure then when it comes to charging a violent criminal. The FBI is completely unnecessary in that equation. All they've done is just swoop in and take credit.
Yeah, and you've made the argument that they should disarm it and make sure that they have to work with local law enforcement. You want to make that argument here. I think it's good, and then we'll kind of move towards the end here. Apparently, Rumble's still having some issues, so they'll folks. If you have a problem on Rumble, and we'll upload that, we'll make sure you get a full copy of the show. It'll be up one way or another at some point in time. I'll retweet it out, but tell them what you think about what should be done, because we keep having this. How do we save the FBI? How do we fix the FBI? How do you burn it to the ground? What should it look like? And there's an answer.
I think there's six of one, half dozen the other. I mean, you either burn it to the ground or you got to completely reform it. And one way they could do it is by defunding the Series 1811 criminal investigator position. And they should do that actually with all law enforcement at the federal level, with the exception of the U.S. Marshal Service, and make them unarmed investigators, just like the FBI's origins that it still takes credit for when it says its birthday, and have them have some resources and technology that they can then partner with local agencies, sheriff's departments, police departments, cross-deputize those guys like they do currently for task force officers, maybe expand that because they're actually good cops, good detectives, have cut their teeth on the street and then worked their way into a detective's office. They know the usual suspects. They know the needs of their community. And then the FBI would have to get the approval of a sheriff to say, we want to investigate Kyle Seraphin for domestic terrorism. And the sheriff could say, no, but you could really look at that fentanyl problem I've got over there. And that way we could sort of route the resources where they really need to go to best serve the community to keep crime down, as opposed to bringing the crime numbers up, which is what the FBI likes to do with its quota system.
The fentanyl problem that Merrick Garland said they're using FISA 702 to get the most amount of information from in violation of the law for the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. No big deal. No big deal. We just have people who lie under oath and non-serious people out there. Apparently, the speaker vote is about to go down here in just a few minutes, so there'll probably be an update. If you guys are not watching our social media, you can check out Real Steve Friend on Twitter. You can check out Kyle Seraphin at Kyle Seraphin on any of those platforms. Mostly we're over on Twitter making noise, and we share some news on True Social. I want to play one more quick little story about Payu. This was brought to me by one of our listeners who appreciated it. Topic number 9, if you'll throw that up on the screen here, Ryan, I just want to read this to you folks because we did talk about this a little while ago. Apparently, we're not done with the story in Greeley, California. There was an illegal COVID-19 testing lab, a Chinese biolab that had all those dead mice and it had pregnancy kits and a bunch of other weird stuff going on. There was a Chinese citizen who formerly lived in Canada who was finally arrested. And apparently he was lured out. This is another great version of exactly what you just talked about. He was lured out by the investigators for the, what are they called? They're like the code enforcement people in this county. And immediately after getting, there it is, her name was Jesslyn Harper. She's the code enforcement officer that found the garden hose that actually like revealed what was going on in the building. They lure him out in an interview. He identified who he was, and the feds were there like 5 seconds later to grab him. And so they didn't get to do the local. It was like the feds waiting to grab him. So everybody is excited about this, but they basically are going to try to sweep this under the rug, saying, well, this was one guy who apparently has been ordered to pay over $300 million for some weird scams he was doing in a Chinese sort of similar scenario in Canada. He had a tech company that was sued and was ordered to pay. They lost their lawsuit in Canada. He's created a bunch of companies in the United States, but he's obviously a lone actor. So I'm sure it's no big deal. It's no big deal. They've got this wrapped up. The Fed's got one guy, and we'll never hear about it again because now they've got someone to investigate. And maybe in 2 or 3 years, we'll see a press release about it. Just kind of interesting that this story is ongoing, and they did finally find the so-called culprit of it. If you don't think this is a Chinese fall guy, and that somebody who's got literally millions, if not tens of millions of dollars invested in weird Chinese biotech on U.S. soil against our law is not part of this. And the best is that the little area really said that they were a small David town and they took down a Goliath. One 62-year-old Chinese guy was apparently the Goliath. It's just bizarre. It's just bizarre. We're living in the upside down, but we're also living because we have unserious people at every level of government doing unserious things. And you know, there's another one. You have any closing thoughts on the Chinese biolab and whether or not they got their man there?
I mean, I don't think they got their man, but look, the FBI allowed the Chinese to operate full-on police stations within New York City for a substantial amount of time. And then when they found out, they got a referral, they still let it operate for like 6 months. And these guys were just going after Chinese folks who had fled, and they were repatriating them back to China to be,
they were doing,
summarily tortured.
Yeah, they're doing extrajudicial renditions. And that's ongoing. So if you guys have not seen our episode, you can dig back into my archives. It's called What is Operation Fox Hunt? This is a long problem that's happened in the United States. It was well known, even under Director Comey, who was talking about it. It's had multiple names, Skynet and some other things. I don't know why Skynet, but that's what they called it. And ostensibly is a Chinese anti-corruption situation where they are trying to repatriate people that have scammed the Chinese government. But in reality, like you said, going after political dissidents, it's pretty on the nose. And even though we know about it, and the last, I guess, 3 directors, Andy McCabe knew about it because he was the DD and the acting director. Comey knew about it. Chris Wray does as well. Still, I'm sure they're still operating in certain cities. We'll hear about it again. It'll pop back up in the news when some other relevant story sort of like accidentally tips over their little Apple cart. But luckily, they got this guy. I can't even begin to pronounce his name, by the way. It ends in Zhu, so Z-H-U. But despite my 2 years of working counter-proliferation and Chinese CI, my ability to pronounce English letters and Chinese characters is 0. Absolutely 0. The
linguist didn't help you? Oh, that's right, because she couldn't read it.
Because she couldn't read it either. Yes, if you don't know the story,
only in the Federal Bureau
of Investigation would they assigned you a Chinese linguist for a group that only has written Chinese text, and she's a spoken word translator only. That's the brilliance of your government. That's the brilliance of taking down auto parts stores. It's the brilliance of all this other sort of nonsense, and that's why we have Joe Biden sitting up there, I suppose. Did we miss anything? Oh, there's one thing. We should go out with a laugh. Should we go out with a laugh on Friday? Is it worth going out for a laugh?
Friendly Friday, man. Send it.
Okay. Ryan, this is video number 5. I was like, why do I have climate bus failure? I have a climate failure. This is a protest that happened in England. This is my favorite situation. There may be some swearing in here. So folks, if you're at work, make sure you, this is some of my favorite stuff. When climate failure protests happen, like when someone glues their hand to a runway and then they sit there and cry about how their hand hurts, this is equally good. Pro tip from the Suspendables. I think you'll co-sign on this one. Don't stand in front of a moving bus, particularly if the bus driver decided he doesn't care that you're there. This is what's going on. Roll video number 5. We'll go out on a high note. They're really getting their back into it.
People on the ground are fucking idiots.
Now, you'll notice that all the voices there were shrill females except the one beta male who's trying to lean his back into what they would call a motor coach. And the motor coach is not interested in what they're doing. It is going to power through and drive down the road because they're in the way. If you are watching on the Rumble channel, obviously you saw it. If you're listening on the audio. That was about a dozen yellow, I guess that's high-vis orange-clad vest-wearing people, mostly females and men who identify as not sure, trying to stop a bus that's full of, like, I don't know, immigrant. I think it's full of immigrants. So this is like when woke runs into woke. It's actually really funny to watch. And they're doing their best to put their hands on the bus and stop it. And there's a guy. Do you see the guy up in the windshield that's looking down? Can you see him?
Yeah, I see him just getting entertained out of it. I'm actually more disturbed. I think I saw 2 children, definitely minors. So where's the concern about the children are our future? It's all for the children, right, Nancy Pelosi?
No, there's someone like sitting on the crab walk here. The guy's doing
he's sitting on the ground, like trying to decide. Yeah, he's trying to decide whether or not his sitting protest is going to be effective, and he realizes it's going to decapitate him because the bus is going. It's so fun. Anyway, this came out of Andy No's Twitter feed. I just every once in a while you see something funny from England. We're not far from having those here. I just say, look, you just keep driving through, man. Safety first. Don't stop on the roadway. Pedestrians have been warned. I don't care what color your vest is. You don't get to stop a bus. There's a reason why getting hit by a bus equals death in every single joke or standard sort of discussion of like, well, tomorrow you could walk out and get hit by a bus, or you could lay in front of a bus like a climate change idiot, one of the climate pagans, and do the FAFO situation, which they just did.
We should maybe like amend our statements first. Like, hey, just so you know, I'm not suicidal. You know, we could say like, hey, just so you know, I'm not planning on going to any sort of protest of a bus this weekend.
I don't intend to lay down in front of any buses.
It's not by my intention.
That's right. God, it's so bad. It's so fun to watch. Anyway, we're watching the world meltdown in real time, and we're enjoying it. Thanks for joining us, Steve Friend. Thanks for being my regular Friday guest, which people always tell me is awesome. Someone said Steve Baker was really, really good, but you were also good. So I wanted you to know that you were.
Pleasure, man, as always. Oh, and we got to remind folks, 10/23, 10/25, Police State in theaters. Get your tickets now. It's we're getting good reports that they had to get some extra theaters available, and they're selling. I think they said about half the people that visit the website actually buy seats.
I think people are interested. Yeah, it's not the cheapest ticket in the world, but you're basically paying because nobody else will allow them to show this. So they're eating all the production costs. They're not going to be able to do all the theaters. It's not going to be handled by some big studio. This is a small independent production. So with a big rollout. Again, policestatefilm.net. You'll catch Steve Friend doing his impression of RFK Jr. His voice was a little bit froggy on that day, but the message is pretty clear. You guys can see him in the trailers. And policestatefilm.net. Again, 23rd and 25th of October. Coming right up, man. It's actually just around the corner. This Monday.
Sure is, next week.
Good deal. All right, buddy. I hope you have a great weekend. Thanks for joining me. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to visit our friend over here at mypillow.com/Kyle. There it is. Open it. There it is. Bigger. mypillow.com/Kyle. Steve was laughing at me. He was making fun of me. He's like, Kyle, you don't even own any MyPillow stuff. You just tell people. I know a bunch of you guys love MyPillow. So I'm just telling you, if you want to use my promo code, you can. Just use promo code Kyle, like I said, wherever you shop. And many of you have, and you get the discounts that you're looking for. You get the deals there. Anyway, if you go to mypillow.com/Kyle, /Kyle rather, just Kyle, you will get like all the deals that are available. It's like a whole print ad. You can just scroll down and see all of them. And we'll say thanks to Catholic Vote as well. Check out The Loop if you guys haven't today. There's some good stuff in there talking about the speaker race. And that is it for our show today. We appreciate you guys joining us. It is now wrapped up. We are streaming live from Liberty Hill, Texas. You can find us in the live chat, rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. You guys know you can always find us over there. I saw the chat was bumping. We do really appreciate it. I hope you guys have a lovely weekend. You can leave us a 5-star review over the weekend, and you will have yours read on the show, just like this one from 1961 Richie, who said, "Me like a lot." This is a very short and sweet one. I have a dozen podcasts that I listen to, and this one's going to be at the top. Just plain great. He spelled plain Plane, like a plane flight. And what I believe that he meant was, you can take us on the plane if you are taking a trip this weekend. So be like 1961 Richie. We really appreciate the review. Folks, follow Ryan Matta, follow us, share the show. You can see it on Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, et cetera, et cetera. Have a great day. God bless. Safe weekend. We'll see you back on Monday.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.